Asara B'Teves in some ways is the strictest of all the fasts, and in other ways contains the key to unlocking Golus. The Tainus on Asara B'Teves is mita'am zeh. Why do we fast on the Asara B'Teves? Because that's the day that the king of Bavel laid a siege to Yerushalayim. Al Yerushalayim, and he brought it under siege and under great distress. And actually that's when the whole concept of Golus began, not only for the Babylonian era, but till today. Subsequent events, like the fact that they breached the city on Shivasa B'Tammuz, B'Tisha B'Av Churban Beis Hamikdash, that they destroyed the Beis Hamikdash on Tisha B'Av, and in Gimel B'Tisha and Rosh Hashanah Harigas Gedalia, and the terrible tragedy of the murder of the governor Gedalia on Rosh Hashanah, which we commemorate on Tzem Gedalia. The truth is that these are all just the subsequent impacts of what began with the siege of Yerushalayim. Therefore, we could say, as the Rebbe once explained in detail, as das is das Borin das Havodram, as the Tainis von Asar B'Teves, that the fast of Asar B'Teves actually has a certain strictness that you don't find with any of the other fasts. As that if Asar B'Teves would fall on a Shabbos, which it doesn't, but it can fall on a Friday, we would not postpone it, because the pasuk refers to it as in the essence, in the middle of that day, which is the same language we have in Yom Kippur, implying it's as strict as Yom Kippur, and therefore even overrides Shabbos. But Baldazer is the mocker from Ala Sibis, the Gimelat Tzemes is a Dirib Mercham of the Gimelat Tzemes. The deeper meaning is because what happened in Asara B'Teves is the cause of all the other events which cause all the other fasts, therefore it is stricter than all the other fasts and could even potentially override Shabbos. Unvebald. As Churban Bayis Sheni in the Golus Shali Deizeh Hemshech von Churban Bayis Rishon, when you remember that the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash is just a continuation of something that began with the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. Especially when you consider that the Geula of rebuilding the second Beis Hamikdash was not a complete Geula, because in Bayis Sheni Chosub Hei Dvarim B'Chulei, because the Beis Hamikdash was missing 5 major components during the second Beis Hamikdash. So it's pretty clear as Asar B'Teves is the Aschola V'Siba of Klolus in Golus, that Asar B'Teves is not just the beginning of the Churban Bayis Rishon, but of the whole concept of Golus. Torah teaches us a principle, which is as HaKadosh Baruch Hu maktim refuah lemaka, that the Eibishter always prepares the healing, the cure, before the disease. Shepirusha, what that means is that the Eibishter gives us the capacity for the best and highest type of refuah possible, which is like the pasuk says, when you don't have the disease in the first place, that's the ultimate refuah. Not just a healing from here onwards, or even a healing that says the person was ill, but it's such a healthy healing that it's as if they were never ill. So in other words, it's a retroactive healing. The ultimate healing is where the disease does not manifest in the first place. From which we can understand the clap, the injury of Golus must have been preceded by the healing of Golus. Even before Golus began. Which, as we've identified, began with the siege of the Babylonians against Yerushalayim. The Eibishter already illustrated to us what would heal the Golus and how you could heal it in such a way that there's no Golus to begin with. What is that answer? What's that secret? The Chazal song, and we all know, Gemara tells us, as the reason why this last Golus has been so long and intense, to the extent that we have no idea when it's supposed to end, is the oven from Sinas Chinam was a result of baseless hatred. From which then makes it clear, as the refuah Geula of Golus is the hefech, that what is the cure and therefore the redemption from such a Golus? The exact opposite, Avas Chinam, baseless love. Avas Yisrael v'shleimusa achdos Yisrael. Love of a fellow Yid, and the ultimate version of love of a fellow Yid, which is complete unity. So unity is what avoids Golus in the first place and heals Golus completely as if it had never happened. On euch, wenn Churban Bayis Rishon, was ist gewähnt nicht mit Zad Siba Hanal, Now, the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, we're not told that it's because of that sinas chinam. Rather, rather, we're told that the reason for the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash was that people served idols and they committed adultery and incest, and they murdered. But even then, Chazal tell us, as I feel of an Eden Zayin Rachmana Litzlan Avodah Zarah, we have precedent in history that even when Jews are idolaters, if they are unified, nobody could touch them. So the fact that they were susceptible, yes, of course it was because of those Averos, but the fact that they were susceptible to attack in the first place was lack of Achdus. So therefore we have to conclude. Even before the wound of Golus began, is in the Motzu Gufa Somach Melech Bavel, in that moment of the siege of Yerushalayim by the Babylonians, the Eibishter created the possibility of peace and unity so that the healing, the cure, should precede the actual wound. The Bible says, what does that mean? The Pula von Amotze Bepashtus is simply, what does a siege achieve? As ein Yotzweinbar, nobody can enter or leave. Keine von der belagerte Stadt kann nicht herausgehen. Nobody in the besieged city could exit. Dann ist es ein Matze, wo alle müssen bleiben zusammen in derselben Stadt, which forces everybody to remain together in one city. Und kein Fremder, nicht von Teves kann nicht da rein. And anybody who's not a local citizen doesn't get in. It says, dort nor Eden. At the time of the besieging of Yerushalayim by the Babylonians, there are only Jews in Yerushalayim. Noch mehr, not only that, this is not an ordinary city, it's Yerushalayim. Der Union von Yerushalayim is angedeutet in der Namen Yerei Shalem, Shleme Sayira. Yerushalayim is not just a place. Yerushalayim is a headspace. Yerushalayim represents absolute, ultimate Yiras Hashem, awe of God. Und wir steht in Yerushalayim, als Yerushalayim hat Maschpir gewinnt Yerushalayim, auf die alle, was pflegen dort kommen. Yerushalayim tell us that Yerushalayim is so powerful that anybody who entered Yerushalayim would feel Yiras Hashem. And haben gesehen die Avodah beim Mikdash Chule, especially when you saw the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, and das ist bei sie verblieben, euch noch sehr umkehren sich ahem. It had such a profound effect that even when the person went home, they retained the Yiras Hashem because of what they had seen in Yerushalayim. So the Motz of Yerushalayim brings to them, so the siege of Yerushalayim causes, as need no sollen Eden sein beachtus. Not only does it force all the Jews to be united because they're stuck in a city together, now noch mehr, also die Achtus soll sein in an Ort von Shleme Sayira, but they should have Achtus in a place that is all about the ultimate dedication to the Eibishter. An Achtus, was is meyusat of Torah or mitzvahs or kedusha, the kind of Achtus that is built out of Torah, mitzvahs, and kedusha. The Eibishter forces them into that situation. Der Scholle von Jener Golus is given by as die Makke Gufot gedav geim sein die Refuah. The way that the Eibishter designed Golus is that the clap of Golus caused the healing of Golus. Vader aber die Refuah is koidem Makke. Especially when you consider that the unity that was formed by the siege happens before the Golus actually happens. The cure is before the illness. The unity forced by the siege happens immediately and visibly as soon as the siege happens. Before you start to feel the pressure and the difficulties and challenges of being in a siege. And for sure, it was long before the objective of the siege, which was to destroy the city. The Achdus happens on day one, as soon as the doors are locked, as soon as they're besieged in the city. And that explains how come the language that we use to describe the siege is such an unusual expression. Somach melech Babel. Somach means like he supported, like the king of Babel supported the siege. It's weird. Von smich on a hill, it comes from the word support and help. Und noch mehr, furthermore, it's not that the Jews chose to be in this environment. Now, Nebuchadnezzar hat machriach gewesen zu gewinnen sich in der Mai mit dem Matzev, was hat bei der Teves gewinnen und gebracht achtes Israel in Yerushalayim. It's the Nebuchadnezzar, the enemy, who forces the Yidden to have to be in a state of complete unity in a place of holiness like Yerushalayim. Zusammen mit dem Beis HaMikdash, in the place where they have the Beis HaMikdash. And das soll mevatel sein der Matzer. Nebuchadnezzar is forcing them into the situation that has the power to break what he's trying to achieve, which is the siege. Not only to break the siege, but to turn things around as if there was no siege in the first place. So why didn't that happen? Unfortunately, people have choice. And unfortunately, the siege did not produce this incredible unity that it could have. And therefore Nebuchadnezzar could eventually have power over them. But the way the Eibishter designed it forced us into a place of Achdus that could have avoided Golus in the first place. The whole purpose of fasting is, as the Rambam tells us, to wake us up and open our hearts to do tshuva. When we remember what it is that caused the particular misfortunes that we're fasting for, that should cause us to do tshuva. It's verstandig, so therefore it's very clear. As Asar b'Teves the Montahidin l'chol l'roish, that Asar b'Teves reminds us primarily as the vexum mevatel zaynos and atzoros. If we want to remove the tzoros of what these different fasts represent, and Golus b'chlal, is durch Avas Yisrael v'Achdus Yisrael. We have to have Avas Yisrael and unity. As alle Eden darfen sein einschließen zusammen. We all have to lock ourselves into one kind of positive siege. Like the Torah says, or Tilim says, that Yerushalayim is the city where everybody comes together. That's what we have to do. And not just any ordinary Achdus, but an Achdus that is strongly founded on Yiras Hashem, on connection to the Beis Hamikdash, Hapnimi v'Shachanti b'Soicham, specifically the Beis Hamikdash as it is within ourselves, as the Torah says that David wants us to have a Beis Hamikdash so he could dwell with us. Miyusad of Torah mitzvah, founded on Torah mitzvahs. On demot v'zayin debitel atzemos. When we get that right, the fast will fall away. And to the contrary, they will all then be turned into days of celebration and Yomim Tovim. And because the descent, the trouble, the difficulties of Asar B'Teves are more severe than the other fast, because this is the catalyst for everything else that happened afterwards, so the rebound of Asar B'Teves will be higher and greater than all the other rebounds of the other fasts. As we'll be able to identify that the Torah calling Asar B'Teves Etzem Hayom Hazeh is to invoke the very positive nature of Yom Kippur that should be reflected on Asar B'Teves as well. Shabbos Shabbosin was his Hecha von Shabbos, that it should be the Shabbos of all Shabbos, higher than a regular Shabbos. Ha'asiri Yeh Kodesh, or to borrow the term that we use in Ma'aseh Behema, that the 10th day should be a day of absolute holiness. And with Hashem, we should have that Avos Yisrael and that Achdus Yisrael as expected and as the Eibishter wants from us, and that way bring about this ultimate Geula, mamish, right now.